let's all just take a moment to discuss that Bon, Meliodas, and King scene. When they saw King's wings, and they're like, you finally grew a pair! Like, you finally did it! And the way it sounded like, oh my god, like, they were literally busting this man's balls. Basically saying, hey, laughing at him, like, you finally grew a pair! They look like little kids' wings! I'm like, yo! Like, dude, like, I can see something like that. It just shows how good of friends they are to be able to do something like that. Because, let's just state the facts here. I feel like if you have a big group of friends and all that, and you talk to them about certain things, like something's going on, obviously they're gonna make fun. They're gonna kid with you, or just be kind of rude to you in some ways, but they do it all in good fun. In this case, what that scene represents is just how good of friends all of them are, when King is just having his balls crushed, basically, by Bon and Meliodas, basically saying, oh, you finally grew a pair, and all that. I'm like, fucking funny, like, yo, like, that had me dying. I was laughing at that scene, because just poor King, he's getting all embarrassed and all that, because he has these little wings sticking out, and they look really freaking small and embarrassing, gotta admit, and the way they were just making fun of him for that, I was just like, oh my god, like, they're good friends. You can definitely see how good of friends they are. But another great scene in that was also Escanor. Now, many might not have noticed this, but Escanor, when he was sitting there talking about the heart, and all, like, when the heart was brought up about Gowther, he's like, oh, about the heart and all that heart magic, I could write a poem about that. My boy Escanor, that is the sin of pride. This is straight up writing poems for his girl Merlin. He's just like, okay, I gotta write this poem about the heart magic and all that. I'm like, Escanor, I fucking love you. You're such a good character. This man just getting all giddy and all that, just writing poems and stuff about Merlin. Like, oh my god, that is amazing. But, let's talk about Escanor for a second, because it needs to be mentioned now, because it's very apparent in, you know, this chapter of Taizai. So, it's in the middle of the day. I think we can all assume it's in the middle of the day. It's not in the middle of the night, but somehow Escanor, he's fine. He's not, you know, turning into buff macho man. So, I'm going to assume Merlin did something, probably put some form of magic on him with an item or whatever, which is causing him not to be able to turn into his, you know, buffer, stronger form, because, as we know, Escanor, even though he is the Sin of Pride, and we do know he does care about his fellow companions, we know how he could possibly become very uncontrollable because of who he is. So I feel like Escanor himself, even his weaker side, knows this, and so he doesn't want that necessarily to happen, so they probably, Merlin herself is probably stopping it to where he doesn't become as powerful, kind of holding that back for the most part, and I feel like that's what was going on, to kind of give a little bit of explanation to whatever's happened to Escanor and why he's not buffing up, even though it's in the middle of the day. So yeah, that's kind of good to know. At least there is some form of way to keep Escanor in check, to where he's not going crazy with pride and all that, which, to be honest with you, I'd love to see Escanor buff again and just, you know, acting like he was, but I can understand why, because he's very dangerous, he's very powerful, and I would see why. There'd be a lot of conflict if he was in full beefcake mode. So, getting off of that though, let's talk about the situation with Diane finally gaining back her memory. So, that plot point is finally settled. It's been there since chapter, like, 120-something? Was it 120-something? Like, it was 120-something, 130. It was in there. That was when Diane lost her memories. I remember doing, like, a live reaction to it when it happened and all that. It was a while ago. And after all of these chapters, finally Diane, she has her memory back. So that plot point is finally concluded. But at the same time, though, when that happened, a plot point opened up for Gowther, that he was one of the 10 Commandments, but also there was more to him. Mysteries were finally popping up. And so the conflict that was set up a long time ago, about like 70 chapters ago, is finally being, you know, fixed. We're finally seeing the conclusion to that conflict, and we can move into what the main goal is, dealing with, you know, the remainder of whatever's going on with the Demon Clan and also the Goddess Clan, because of what we had with the previous flashback arc. So, with Gowther finally going to probably be getting fixed and having his heart back, but also Diane as well finally actually having her memories back, this is really good news, because there's going to finally be more progression going on with the story, besides just focusing on these two characters. And finally, since all the 7 deadly sins are back, this means that, you know, they're able to work together and tackle whatever foe they may face. Oh, and I really like that callback to the laws of the 7 deadly sins and all that. And one of the laws in this episode, or chapter, my bad, it's a habit. Basically, in this chapter, you had to where, oh, if any of the 7 deadly sins are ever in danger, we're all together. We must come to their aid and help them with everything we possibly can. And that's what they were doing for Gowther. They were going to help him out to make sure he doesn't go over the deep end or is depressed anymore. They're trying to help him out. So I kind of like that callback to one of the few times we've actually heard a law on the 7 deadly sins, because it's been a very long time. It was like in the first 30 chapters, 40 chapters of the series when something like that was mentioned. I forget exactly, but it was a long time ago. So that was a nice callback to something like that was said. I think Bon mentioned the first law in the first 30 or 40 chapters. But regardless, though, I'm glad to see that brought up, and just to see how the antics of the 7 deadly sins are very wacky and crazy because of just how different they are. They make for a very interesting group. So let's talk about the entire situation with Gowther. So Gowther, we know he's going to be the main crucial point of the plot at this moment to settle, because number one, he gave up his heart. He didn't want his heart anymore because of the pain he experienced. He lost someone he loved, and we saw the flashback. If you haven't seen the side story to it, you need to go see it, because you need to, you know, actually read that side story to understand what's going on with Gowther. And that's how it goes for any of the 7 deadly sins. Majority of the 7 deadly sins have their own side chapter. For instance, focusing on them and how they got their sin in the first place. I mean, Bond's got it. We've seen some on Meliodas, basically that pertains to Hawk. We've had, you know, Escanor have his own personal one. We've had Diane and King have their own. I mean, we have seen each individual character, almost all the sins, have their own individual side story. And so if you haven't seen Gowther's or the others, you need to go see it, because it's very important. And in this case, because of what we know from Gowther and his side story, we know why he doesn't want the heart, because of the painful experience it was. And basically, his conclusion at the end of the chapter was he needs to purge his memories, because he doesn't like how he's feeling. He wants to purge everything. And obviously, Diane comes in and stops him completely. Like, no, you fucking don't. And stopped him, pushed him out of the way. Like, basically flying drop kicked him. I'm like, damn. Like, she coming in just wrecking this man. But, Gowther is going through an issue right now. He doesn't understand. He's finally getting some emotions back, and once he gains back his heart, he can be whole once again. And I'm kind of curious to see how this is going to be settled. Will Gowther stand up and try to fight against Diane again, or will he understand and try to accept his heart? I do hope he joins them, gets his heart back, and he helps out the 7 deadly sins, but who knows, anything could possibly happen. So, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I love you all so much. You have a wonderful day. And also, actually, whoa, before I end it, I forgot something. Apparently, the body of Gowther was modeled after the lover of the real Gowther. The face, at the very least. But then the body, the rest of the body was turned to be like a dude's, because there would be no passion or lust for the body from the original real Gowther. That's interesting. It makes me wonder exactly who was the lover of the real Gowther. But anyways, though, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I love you all so much. Please be safe. Chibi out.